Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a non-Euclidean Charles Coulombe.
Non-Euclidean. Living like beyond Euclid's geometry.
That's right. That's right.
Outside of time and space as we commonly think of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
This kind of happened last pre-show. We kind of were enjoying this, and I thought I'd let the peasant folk in the full episode know about non-Euclidean shapes as well.
Well, it's a good thing you said that, because from my strange position outside the normal, the wonted haunts of man, I have come up with a solution for us all to the current problems under which we labor in church and state.
Okay.
Now, the specific solution I propose is for me, but I am recommending it to everyone. And do you know what that is?
What?
Well, to my masters in church and state, I have no control over anything. If they tell me I can't have the Latin Mass, I'm screwed. If they tell me I can't eat in any restaurant I want to eat in, I can't do anything I want to do on the outside, I've got to do as my owners tell me. Yeah, you know what? I've had enough. I'm leaving. I'm going to bed tonight after the broadcast. 61 years old in beautiful Lower Austria. I'm going to go to bed. And when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to wake up 4 years old in Mount Kisco, New York in 1964. And my parents and my brother and me, we are going to go to Mass at St. Francis of Assisi in beautiful Mount Kisco. And we're going to go to the Tridentine Mass. And there's nothing the Pope can do about it. And then you know what we're going to do?
What?
I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get in the car and we're going to drive through beautiful Westchester. And we're going to see all sorts of old colonial buildings and beautiful woods and so forth. Although it's kind of cold because it's February. And you know where we're going to end up?
Where?
We're going to end up at the log cabin in Armonk. Yeah. That's right. Not burned down. And there at the log cabin, that wonderful restaurant, we're going to have steak dinners. And you know what else? We're not wearing masks, you morons. And we won't be vaccinated, except maybe against smallpox. And you know what else? You smart people, you owners, you masters, you rulers, I'll be sitting pretty way back with my parents, and there's nothing you slime can do about it. And maybe this time Goldwater's going to win the election. That's right. AUH2O. Uh-huh. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. The little old ladies with tennis shoes are going to win this time. And my advice to all of you, everybody, is that you do the same thing. Everybody, go back to whatever time in the past you were happiest and safest in. Go right back. And tomorrow morning, the sun will dawn on a nearly empty planet. And our masters will say, where are my servants? Where are my subjects? Why can't I screw with their lives anymore? Where are they? And no one will hear them, because all they'll have are themselves. It'd be so sad for them. So very sad. And their little mouths can flutter, and their little hands can go up and down, and they can stamp their little feet, and there'll be nothing they can do about it. Won't that be sad for them?
Boy, a psychotic break really solves everything.
I'm telling you. It's all good now. Plus, my body, trapped in the present, has to be supported at state expense. Now, for those of you who are less interested in psychotic breaks, and some of you, I guess, may be violently trying to hold on to sanity, I got to tell you, convoys. Woohoo! We got a great big convoy going through the night. We got a great big convoy. Ain't she a beautiful sight? Convoy. Yes, indeed. Little Justine Trudeau is jumping up and down with horror. Everyone's upset. Here in Austria, they're banning the convoys. Oh, gee willikers. See, it makes me giggle because did not the ideological grandfathers of our current owners tell their peons of that time that rebellion against the then authorities was what was required?
So for those of us who don't watch the news,
Oh, I see.
can you explain what you're talking about?
I can.
Please do so.
All right, sure. Happy to help. Basically, it started a week or two ago in Canada, the Great White North, where the truckers were told that they couldn't truck unless they were vaccinated. Well, see, a trucker spends all his time by himself anyway. And there was a big explosion of the Canadian truckers. So they made a huge convoy all across the country into Ottawa. And they have paralyzed the city. And in various other parts of the country, the same thing has happened. And the reaction has been very different. In Manitoba, they say, we're dropping all restrictions on March 15th. In Ontario, Premier Ford has said, we are going to criminalize everything. The cops have been trying to interfere in Ottawa with people getting petrol or food to the convoys. And they've even, they're criminalizing it, doing all sorts of fun stuff. And the same has been true in France and Austria and Britain, not Britain, but because they've dropped everything, but France and Austria and various other places. The convoy movement has really been a lot of fun to watch, and it's sort of coalesced with pre-existing things. Like here in Austria, the regular demonstrations have sort of mixed and merged. The government have declared it illegal for the convoys to come into the capital. And I mean, it's just, it's fun to watch. And you see, the problem is, I think it will be admitted, regardless of how you stand on anything, that the past 2 years have seen an unprecedented amount of government intervention in the everyday life of the individual in most developed countries. I think that's fair to say. What they didn't realize or didn't expect is that if you do something unprecedented, there might be an unprecedented response. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, have you ever smacked me in the face?
No.
No. But if I ever pulled your tie off, or just gone to your place, you welcome me into your home, and I grab your tie and pull it off. Has that ever happened before?
No.
No. But if one day I came to your house and, not saying it, just yanked that tie right off your neck, might you smack me? I mean, just as an automatic reaction.
Yes.
Well, you never smacked me before. Why are you smacking me now?
I don't know.
Well, it's because I never pulled your tie off you before.
That's true.
And probably if I hadn't pulled your tie off, you probably wouldn't have smacked me.
That's very true, Charles.
Yeah, it is.
But we're living in the new normal.
Ooh. The new normal where everybody's for sale. We all get to be hookers now. Yeah, I know. I know. But unfortunately for the people that make these decisions, they aren't the only people in the universe. You see, I may take a psychotic break to escape them, but there are other people who are younger and don't have, shall we say, the internal resources to go into a completely vegetative state.
Wow. And not everyone has those resources.
No, not everyone can just completely withdraw from reality. Some people find themselves forced to do something in the real world. And it's funny to watch how hysterical they become. I mean, honestly, all kidding aside, we are seeing the unmasking of the liberal democratic regime for what it is. And the problem is that the ideology upon which it's based lends itself to revolt. I mean, as I say, their grandfathers told us we don't need kings. Their fathers told us we don't need the church. Okay. You know what else we don't need then? Little pointed headed morons who, in addition to the ideologies of their fathers, don't have anything like their abilities.
Yeah, things are getting pretty crazy. For the first time ever in Arcadia, as I was driving to the tower to do the show, on Santa Anita and what is it, Duarte,
Yeah.
on that corner, I was stopped at that light and I heard someone on a megaphone, and I thought it was the police, but it wasn't the police. It was this guy with this giant sign, and at the top of it, it said "Repent."
No, that's probably wise in any case.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, yeah, but I had never seen a demonstration like that before in Arcadia, and I don't know how long that guy's going to be able to stay there, because that's his megaphone was fairly intrusive, but that was a first. That was a first for me.
Well, I mean, people are really getting fed up. And of course, part of the problem, like where you are now, okay, in California, most of the counties except SF and LA County have relaxed the restrictions.
Yeah.
Okay, the problem with living in a place where they haven't relaxed the restrictions is that suddenly, I mean, you can go to Ventura or Orange County and you're free of the crap.
Not entirely. I mean, yeah, okay. Gina's parents are in Ventura County, so we have a beat on them. But yeah, they're not like LA County. I'll tell you that.
No. And the problem with that is that it makes LA County look ridiculous to its own subjects.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a servant of the owners of LA County, you feel like a moron. And within LA County, the creatures that own the city of Los Angeles look even stupider.
But why don't
because
they
they're
mind
more well, because they're stupid. You got to understand, these are not very intelligent people. They have no education, not really. Remember something. The people my age who kind of rearranged education and all that turned into indoctrination. The problem with indoctrination is that while you're being indoctrinated, you're not learning real stuff.
Okay.
Every hour of the day that you're getting indoctrinated, you're not learning something useful and real.
But even stupid people can go with the flow, and they can it's monkey see, monkey do.
Yes, but when you're in charge, it's different. You remember that great line? Some weeks or months ago, I recited the Recessional from Kipling. There's a line in it that always makes me think of our masters. Drunk with sight of power. They really think that because they're in charge, they can do anything they like. Because that's their idea. Their idea of rulership is not service.
It's just kind of weird balancing all these things out, because historically we lived under politicians where rule number one is political expediency.
Well,
and now you have, again, like in the example of LA County, where they're stricter. That's not politically expedient.
No, because remember, I've said this before on the program, insanity in a leadership class is when the visions of sugar plums in their head are more important to them, even than their own self-interest. So, for instance, my favorite example are the Nazis fighting the Soviets.
Yeah.
But our masters in Washington today would rather see women in combat than win battles. Any mayor who calls for defunding the police and then doesn't understand why the crime rates suddenly rise. He's insane, but his insanity has made him stupid. Plus the fact that he has no education and no religion. So he has all he has a handle on is himself to a degree. He doesn't understand his subjects and he doesn't care to. He really doesn't give a damn. I mean, it is the difference, as Aristotle would tell us, or St. Thomas, between aristocracy and oligarchy. This is not ruled by the best, but ruled by the wealthiest and most powerful who have no real redeeming qualities.
I see. So.
And the problem with being ruled by people like that, too, is that it makes it difficult to come up with an alternative because everything they've touched, they've corrupted. So where do the ranks of new leaders come from? And if they come about through violence or something else, how likely are they to be any good themselves? This is why so often periods like ours end up in chaos, out of which something new arises. And that something new can be better or worse, depending on all sorts of factors. And I have to admit, I mean, I can understand why the site it's like the 106 people making their way into the Capitol. That sort of thing frightens them. It gets them very upset and annoyed in a way that thousands of businesses being burned to the ground didn't matter to them at all. Because that wasn't happening to them. They didn't care. It was only, one group of the pets attacking another group. That's not important. But when they themselves are faced with it, oh gee, well, look, it's very upsetting.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, if I weren't capable of completely breaking with reality utterly, I don't know what I'd
do. You just tune out.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, middle-age withdrawal syndrome, Moz. Get there on your sofa, watch Bewitched.
That's right. Yeah, I have a new Moz. I watch a lot of bushcraft stuff. I watch like people just making a shelter out of nothing, like chopping the wood from trees and then constructing the shelter, and then like literally like taking a log and then carving that log into a fork and then eating with that fork. Like that's what I watch now. It's very relaxing. It's very real too. When you're in the digital space so much, you need something real to balance that out, because there's so much unreality in this electric box.
That's why when I'm not at the computer, I read fantasy novels.
Well, there's that too. That's funny.
No, seriously though.
But
on a happier note, I do have a happier note.
Yeah.
Are you ready to switch gears? Get all random?
Yes.
What am I wearing on my lapel?
That's the flag of the United States, red, white, and blue.
That's right. What color is my tie?
Red, white, and blue.
That's right. And do you know why?
Lincoln's birthday.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, today, the day that we're doing this, is Lincoln's birthday. Lest you think that I've sold out, you'll be happy to know that on Lee's birthday, I wore my Confederate flag pin. And on Martin Luther King Day, I wore my Knights of Peter Claver pin. So there.
No, I'm reporting you to the proper authorities.
Well, I'm in favor of everybody. I'm in favor of everything. No, I honestly, though, Lincoln is a character like Washington, with whom I have, shall we say, very ambiguous feelings. In the sense that he did great things, he did bad things,
Yeah.
I don't know that going to war to save the Union was the best thing to do, nor that suppressing habeas corpus and freedom of the press was great, or bringing in the income tax. It's interesting that the Supreme Court, after he died, found most of his stuff illegal, most of the things he did. Having said that, on the one hand, on the other hand, I've always said that the second worst thing that happened to the South, uh, uh, other than being defeated, of course, was his death, because he was interested in reuniting the country. That was all he cared about. It was more important to him than whether or not the slaves were free. It was more important to him than any element of our foreign affairs. All he cared about was reuniting the Union. That was it. And once he got what he wanted, well, I think if he had lived, there would have been no Reconstruction. And if there had been no Reconstruction, I think in a very good chance there would have been no Jim Crow. And our racial relations would not have been so terminally poisonous.
Would they have been poisonous on some, that's an interesting what if, you know?
Yeah, it was a very interesting what if. And of course, one never knows for sure. That's the problem with what ifs. But my suspicion is that the amount of hatred built up on the part of the white Southern population toward the black by their Reconstruction experience would have been a great deal less had there not been a Reconstruction experience. But again, it's one of those things we'll never know.
Okay. Okay, so Lincoln's birthday. Let's celebrate. Tomorrow is the Super Bowl. Who are you rooting for? The Lakers?
Lake.
That's your joke. That's what you always tell me.
No. No, the Maple Leafs. Actually, the LA Kings. Who's playing in the Super Bowl? Is it baseball or football?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I have a paper to do on whether or not God is a person tomorrow. I don't have time for the Super Bowl.
Whether or not God is a person?
Yeah.
What are you going to write?
Well, it's not as simple as it seems. There are three possibilities. One that he is, one that he is an impersonal force, and the other is that he is personal, but not a person in the sense that we use person.
What did St. Thomas say?
Gosh, depends on who you talk to.
That's a surprisingly complicated question.
It's a very complicated question. And it goes into, if he's pure act, which is what St. Thomas says, can it be said that he's a person? Now, St. Thomas says that you can call him a person, however, ... I am not an abstract thinker. I much prefer history. I really do.
How are you going to do that with his history?
Well, you can't do it with history. I'm going to do it. I have to face abstract thought in a way I absolutely hate doing. But it's this is where the reality of personhood becomes important, is the sense that each of us has a different bent. There's some people, I assure you, for whom this kind of stuff, abstract thought, is really, really, really meat and potatoes. It's just great stuff for them.
Yeah.
And, God bless them. But it just isn't for me.
Yeah. I'd like to see that paper. That'd be pretty cool. I don't think I've seen you write abstractly like that.
No, and it's not something I enjoy doing. I should be doing it even as we speak, but I'm doing the show instead. And the paper is due by tomorrow night, so...
Okay, well, we'll handle this episode expediently.
Oh, I don't know about that. There's so much more to say, because it's not just Lincoln's birthday.
What is it?
Well, traditionally, in the Tridentine Rite, this was called the deposition, or the burying of the Alleluia.
Okay.
because tomorrow is Septuagesima Sunday, the beginning of Septuagesima season, Carnival. No more Alleluia, and no Alleluia through Lent, no Alleluia until the Vigil Mass of Easter. Not in the Latin Rite.
Don't they take out the Gloria too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
But the Alleluia, even in Advent, they keep the Alleluia. They take it out, and now the Byzantine Rite, they triple it. But in the during Lent, but with us, through the 3 weeks of Septuagesima, the 6 weeks of Lent, no Alleluia. So it's the farewell to Alleluia. And then tomorrow is Septuagesima, purple vestments, the beginning of the carnival season. 3 weeks. I think this week or next week for the Byzantines is Meat Fair Sunday, which is when they can't have meat after that. And then Cheese Fair, no more dairy.
For the Byzantines?
Yeah.
Wow.
See, it used to be with us, and it's still with them, that during that they didn't have meat, butter, eggs, cheese. Yeah. And so that meant Carnival was a big deal for both East and West because it's the farewell of the goodies. And this is a good time to begin considering what it is you're going to do for Lent, for Lenten penance. When I lived at home and didn't have lived at home in LA and didn't have quite the burdens I acquired later, I kept Lent very, very strictly. Now, and for the past, let's say 11 years, I've relaxed it considerably because I found myself doing a lot of other things that require more strength than I was capable of doing it with a heavy fasting routine.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. It's not just abstention; it's also fast. And there, two things have changed because originally, what a fast day meant was one full day, one full meal, again with no meat or dairy or anything like that, and one.
Two smaller meals, not greater than that.
No, one smaller meal.
Wait, what?
Yes. Later, it became two. But originally, it was one small meal and the large meal.
When did they change that?
I'm not quite sure, but I think it was in the 19th century.
Oh.
And then,
wow.
Yeah.
That's really hard because you figure, I mean, there's so much manual labor. I mean, if you're like like a farmer or something, you're out all day.
Well, it was generally easier for them, but one of the best accounts I've ever read of out fasting was from Brias Savarin, who wrote about fasting before the French Revolution. He makes a comment that he says, "Let us see what was done on fast days. Nobody breakfasted, and therefore all were more hungry than usual. All dined, that means lunch, and that was the big meal, as well as possible, but fish and vegetables was soon gone through with. At 5 o'clock, all were furiously hungry, looked at their watches, and became enraged, though they were securing their soul's salvation. At 8 o'clock, they had not a good supper, but a collation, a word derived from cloister, because at the end of the day, monks used to assemble to comment on the works of the fathers, after which they were allowed a glass of wine. Neither butter, eggs, nor anything animal was served at these collations. They had to be satisfied with salads, confitures, a very unsatisfactory food to such appetites at that time. They went to bed, however, and lived as long as the fast lasted." Uh, young persons, and then it says origin of the removal of restriction in fasting. I witnessed the rise of this. It advanced by almost insensible degrees. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot one thing I must mention. He says, I have seen two of my granduncles, very excellent men too, almost faint with pleasure, when on the day after Easter they saw a ham or a pate brought on the table. A degenerate race like the present experiences no such sensation. And then he says, origin of the removal of restriction in fasting. I witnessed the rise of this, advanced by almost insensible degrees. Young persons of a certain age were not forced to fast, nor were not pregnant women, or those who thought themselves so. When in that condition, a soup, a very great temptation to those who were well, was served to them. Then people began to find out that fasting disagreed with them and kept them awake. All little accidents men is subject to were then attributed to it, so that people did not fast because they thought themselves sick or that they would be so. Collations thus gradually become rarer. This was not all. Some winters were so severe that people began to fear a scarcity of vegetables, and the ecclesiastical power officially relaxed its rigor. The duty, however, was recognized and permission was always asked. The priests refused it, but enjoined the necessity of extra almsgiving. The revolution came, which occupied the minds of all, that none thought of priests, who were looked on as enemies of the state. This cause does not exist, but a new one has intervened. The hour of our meals is totally changed. We do not eat so often, and a totally different household arrangement would be required for fasting. This is so true that I may safely say, though I visit none but the best regulated houses, that except at home, I have not seen a Lenten table or a collation 10 times in 25 years. Now, he's writing in the 1820s. So it's also interesting to notice that he was one of the biggest gourmets, not to say gourmands, of his time.
Who?
Brillat-Savarin.
Oh, okay.
But you see, he hadn't seen that Lenten fasting except in his own home, which means that the prince of the epicures kept up the Lenten fast, even though it was pretty much abandoned in its full severity by his time. However, another quote, not from him, but from Benedict XIV, that's very important in the 18th century. He says, and I quote, the observance of Lent is the very badge of Christian warfare. By it, we prove ourselves not to be enemies of Christ. By it, we averge the scourges of divine justice. By it, we gain strength against the princes of darkness, for it shields us with heavenly help. Should men grow remiss in their observance of Lent, it would be a detriment to God's glory, a disgrace to the Catholic religion, and a danger to Christian souls. Neither can it be doubted that such negligence would become the source of misery to the world, of public calamity, and of private woe.
Wow. Whew.
So, when you see both Benedict XIV and Brillat-Savarin agreeing on something, take note. And so my advice is that the more you enjoy Carnival, Mardi Gras, the more you should fast during Lent. If you're not going to fast in Lent, don't have a good time during Carnival.
Well, the news of the diet and how strict it was is certainly inspiring in a sense that you think of all of our options and our fasting is still not as would not be as rigorous as that generally.
No.
So that's very inspiring.
And I got to tell you that in the 15 or so years that I maintained that kind of fasting for Lent, I knew exactly what he meant by his great uncles going crazy when they delented.
Well, the one Lent that I did that, like I was really strong. I remember, I think it must have been like four years ago or so. But I remember absolutely going, like Googling everywhere to see exactly when the fast is up on Saturday. Like, because like
Yeah.
you're at the end of your rope and it's Saturday and it's like, well, I'm past Good Friday, so when is it?
Well, see, that's the thing, and of course, in the before 54, when the Saturday Vigil had retreated to the morning,
Yeah.
people generally felt that Lent ended on at noon on Holy Saturday,
Mm.
so they'd have a big lunch. But then 55, the vigil gets put back into the night. So then the question is, well, is it still noon on Holy Saturday, or is it after the vigil in the early Easter morning?
Mm.
After midnight, basically.
Yeah. So.
And the tough thing for me in those days, I always would make a leg of lamb for Easter.
Yeah.
But of course, I'd have to cook it on Holy Saturday night.
That is brutal, Charles. How could you do that to yourself?
It wasn't fun, I can tell you. But higher duty.
Oh, very good.
How I live for others, squirt, squirt. You can tell the others by the hunted look.
All right, we are approaching the 40-minute mark, so we better get the show on the road.
Let's move. I got to be rotten.
That's right. So it's time for the memes of production.
Nationalize the memes of production.
For the common good. Just a couple comments from people on our previous videos. Todd Bird says, so this is in reference to the lightning round. I forgot what pizza you had to choose between. I think it was like St. Louis and Detroit, or St. Louis and
Chicago.
Oh, Chicago. There we go. And so Todd Bird says, St. Louis pizza is a sin that cries out to heaven for vengeance. Anyone who says, quote, even bad pizza is still good has never eaten Imo's. So,
well, I never have, so.
Yeah. And Jeff Finkbonner says, so this is in reference to the 7 sentences, if you guys remember that episode. And so he says, Charles truly shows his chaotic neutral colors here. If he's beset by stronger and more aggressive avatars, he wisely does not fight them head on. He instead opts to stun them into docility by unleashing a bewilderment spell, compliments of the 13th floor.
So it comes to being non-Euclidean.
There you go. That's right.
I think there's a certain in throwing nonsense at our masters.
That's very true. They say insane things all the time. So why can't you also be what is it? Is it non-cohesive? What is it?
No, incoherent.
Incoherent. There we go. Incoherent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if they're going to say to me that I have to accept that gender is a matter of personal choice, my response is, so is dolphinhood. What? Why can't I be a dolphin?
I don't know, Charles. You can be a dolphin if you want.
I can indeed. Or a dolphin and a buffalo at the same time. And a vampire bat.
Wow. I didn't know that was your style.
It's not.
Oh.
Well, it could be.
That's true.
It depends on which of the masters I'm addressing and what mood I'm in.
That's true. In the words of Bob Ross, it's our world. We can do what we want.
Exactly.
All right.
It also says that on the United Nations website.
Does it? We can do what we want?
It doesn't say that. It just says it's your world.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I should find refuge in the United Nations in the spirit of Dag Hammarskjöld.
That's the other, by the way, mentioning Bob Ross, that's the other thing I use for my middle-age withdrawal syndrome, is I just tune out with Bob Ross. Do you know who Bob Ross is? He's the painting guy, where he draws the paintings. He's got this big afro, and he's got this button-down shirt, and it's like total hippie. but he has this very soothing way of talking, and his goal is to actually teach people how to paint beautiful landscapes. He does
Huh.
really nice landscapes. I would think you'd. I'm surprised you don't know him. I thought he's like on KCET, sort of like the same sort of cool variety as Huell Howser. You know, like kind of like that.
Really?
You know what I mean? Where it's
Huh.
very low production, but I mean, he was
Bob
on TV for
Ross.
like 20 years. I thought.
Really? Bob, now you've got me wondering. Bob Ross, American painter. Oh, gosh, you're not kidding.
Yeah, like.
Man alive. Yeah, the joy of painting was from 83 to 94.
Yeah, so where were you? I don't understand.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And he, now that's interesting. His marital history is quite unique.
Oh yeah, I know his wife died of lymphoma in the 90s, which is very sad.
Well, he married Vivian Ridge. They were married from 65 to 77. Then Jane Ross, 77 to 92. I guess he met this hip chick or something. And then Linda Brown, 95 to 95. So he wasn't married to her very long.
95 to 95.
Yeah.
Oh no, he got lymphoma. Excuse me, he got lymphoma. But yeah, his okay, I see.
Bob Ross was. Is he still alive?
No, he died in the 90s.
No,
Yeah.
no. Oh, he died in 95. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
He died in 95. Oh, gosh. He does look pretty blissed out, though.
Yeah.
He was only 52 when he died. That's sad.
Yeah. So.
He,
You know, I think of him, he's like the patron saint of hippies almost. Like he sort of embodies like their ideal. Like he's chill, he's laid back, he's very soothing. He's got this, thing with nature, animals, it's just
well, this is interesting. Ross was well known for phrases he tended to repeat while painting, such as, let's add some happy little trees.
there are no mistakes, only happy accidents.
In every show, Ross wore jeans and a plain light-colored shirt, which he believed would be a timeless look, and spoke as if addressing one viewer.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess so.
When asked about his relaxed and calm approach, he said, I got a letter from somebody here a while back, and they said, Bob, everything in your world seems to be happy. That's for sure. That's why I paint. It's because I can create the kind of world that I want, and I can make this world as happy as I want it. Shoot, if you want bad stuff, watch the news.
Yeah, there you go. And it is very relaxing because if you think about it, when you're doing a landscape, you aren't really making mistakes. I mean, it's your thing. So
yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to have a.
All of his videos, like literally every episode he's ever done, is on YouTube, and they're all a ton of watches, ton of views. So
I'll have to have a look.
Yeah,
isn't that something? I've never heard of him. Well, now mind you, since you brought him up, Huell Howser, he had a. Let me see if I can find the quote. He had a quote of this. Huell Howser was, as you say, he always looked up nice stuff. And he was amazing, just amazing. He made the comment. There's Huell. He'd always say, "This is amazing." He's always positive.
Yeah.
He says, this is a quote, Howser's had the audacity to rhapsodize about state parks and women with collections of tiny violins and family-owned businesses such as the mattress factory, where one man's job is to jump up and down on mattresses to compress their fluff. That is because Howser only likes things that are positive. He made the comment, and someone asked him about why his stuff was always nice and all that. And he says, "Oh, sure, I know there are rapes and murders out there, but that's not what I'm interested in. If people want to see that, there's plenty of ways to see it. They can, but I have to say, I have a lot of sympathy with that point of view. I wish I could share it completely."
Well, it's not only that he's positive, but it's a little bit more than that, because he's not going to sort of the trendy things, like the big attractions. At least
No.
not the ones that I saw. It's sort of the places he would go, sort of like the sort of understated national parks or state parks, and then sort of like the mom and pop things that have a novelty that you kind of drive past or skip over generally. But then he sees the cute little, I don't know how to say it well, but he takes pride in these little things.
Well, he does, and the thing is that there are a lot of them, and they are a great relief from the horrors that we have to deal with. I mean, in your little unnamed town, far away from the beauties of Arcadia, just a Sunday stroll down your main street, is always, it's filled with interesting shops and so forth. There was one which, alas, is closed now, but it was called Eastwick.
Yeah.
And that's where I got my brother his lawn jockey, actually. But it was filled with all sorts of stuff.
Charles, I mean, I walk down the street. I wish Gina would go with me sometimes, but I was walking down, and there's this tree, and all these tags are on it. And I'm like, why are all these tags on this tree? And it's a gratitude tree. And
that is so your town.
And there's a little mailbox filled with little slips where you can fill out what you're grateful for, and then you hang it on a leaf. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Next house over, I kid you not, right along the curb, there's a cute little, I guess, bunch of chocolates and other cute little things. And then there's a bell. And it says, "Ring to bring the fairies." And I tell you what, I wanted to ring that so much, but I was also really scared because I didn't know if something was going to come out of that house to get me or something.
Oh, go ahead and ring the bell. It's broad daylight.
But I'd never seen stuff like that before, and I was like, wow, this is so cool.
It's a really twee little town you live in.
Yeah.
I mean, and to be honest with you, frankly, if I could afford to, that's where I would have lived.
Yeah.
It's quite a nice place.
Yeah. But again, it's what makes the houses so amazing is not, it's not like, oh, we bought a really nice house that the construction company put up, and then you get some landscapers doing this great landscaping. You can tell the love and the care that got put into it by homemade crafts and all these other things. Painted rocks are everywhere, that kind of stuff. So
well, one of the things that really does amaze me about life in general, you might say, is that so many towns and even suburban spots, and there's something everywhere. There are historic house museums, the little parks, and all garden clubs. I mean, it's just all this stuff. And really, one wishes to God one could just plug into that and leave the drivel behind,
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the drivel has a way of spilling over.
Yeah, it does.
I was having a conversation with a political figure who'll go nameless right now, but a European political figure
Okay.
this past week. And, one of the things we agreed on is that governance, as we've known it, has pretty much failed. But the new technology and all that does offer a chance for that level of life to, shall we say, get in touch with itself.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you figure your little town, there are little towns like it all across not just the country, but the globe.
Yeah.
And they could all, if you'll pardon the expression, reach out to one another now. And that will have an effect on the future.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people being people, the bad is always with the good.
Yeah.
But anyway, the world of tomorrow will look as different to this moment as this moment does to the world of yesterday.
Yep.
When you figure the first time that I entered the Franchini realm, it was decades ago, and what a different world that was.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
well,
The
do we have any more memes?
That's it. Oh wait, yep, that's it. We're done with the memes. Are you ready for the questions?
Possibly. Do you want to show my escape picture?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is Charles's psychotic break picture. He posted this on Facebook. I'll just reiterate what he says. I've decided that the best solution to deal with our problems in church and state is an utter and complete psychotic break with reality. So tonight I'm going to bed, a 61-year-old in 2022 in Lower Austria. But I'm waking up tomorrow, a 4-year-old. My parents, brother, and me are going to go Sunday Mass at St. Francis of Assisi Church in Mount Kisco in February of 1964. Bye-bye, everybody. Maybe Goldwater will win this time. Gosh, that's... I don't think you've seen the movie Shawshank Redemption, but that reminds me of Shawshank Redemption, where they're in this prison, and life is so bleak and bad that one of the themes it delves into is you can't guess what's in here, because the protagonist, he gets thrown in the hole, for like a month, which is like insane, right? You're just in a black thing, this black room. There's no light in, and he says something like, but. I brought Mozart in there with me, because that's the beauty of music. They can't get it. They can't take it from you. So your memory of your family, like that's at that level. You know what I mean? Like, you can't take this from me. This is something special that I have. You can never take that away from me.
Nope. And everybody watching this has their own place like that.
Yeah.
So I reiterate what I said earlier. Let's all do it. Let them wake up to an empty planet tomorrow and wonder what it is they're going to be ruling now.
A bunch of dogs and cats. That's what they wanted.
Yeah, well, that's what they'll have. I hope they can get tax money out of them. Best of luck with that. Or Peter's pets. Enjoy.
All right, let's move on to the questions.
All right.
Mason says, I have a short question for Mr. Coulombe. What is his favorite church Ralph Adams Cram designed, and why? Also, could a Catholic architect work on non-Catholic churches or go into them out of architectural curiosity in good conscience? Interesting.
Well, very good. Well, firstly, Ralph Adams Cram, ladies and gentlemen, for those who know and those who don't, was probably the leading American church architect of the last part of the 19th century and definitely the first half of the 20th. He was Anglo-Catholic to the point of papalist, and actually designed a number of Catholic churches, my favorite of which is Sacred Heart, Jersey City, which unfortunately has been closed but still exists. I'm sure it'll be destroyed by some moron in the Archdiocese of Newark under dear old Cardinal Tobin. But although its closing, I think, predates Tobin's excretion onto the scene. But my favorite Cram was also a great political and social and cultural commentator. And in fact, Tumbler House has reprinted his Gold, Frankincense, and Myrrh. Oh, I'm sorry, was that a plug?
It's on sale. Normally $13, now $6.45 in the Tumbler House bookstore.
And if you buy 4 of them, 3 to give away to friends, you will take advantage of the free shipping and handling. Be the first on your block to spearhead a Ralph Adams Cram revival.
That's right.
But he designed churches. Well, actually, I've got to tell you, he also did the interior of St. Vincent's, Los Angeles. He didn't do the exterior, but he did the interior. And that's one of my very favorite of his churches. But I think my favorite of his Gothic style, strict Gothic style, would be the sadly Episcopal but Anglo-Catholic Church of All Saints Ashmont, outside Boston, where you could really see all of his principles put to work. He also did a lot of collegiate architecture, though, and private homes. The company he founded, Cram and Ferguson, is still with us, still doing churches, and they're in Concord, Massachusetts. But Ethan Anthony, the man who owns them now, is in fact a devout Catholic of the trad variety. And so we have several guys like this. What's his name in South Bend? Stoic. It does great work. We have a number of these guys, but I know Ethan and I know Cram and Ferguson. So they did Walsingham in Houston, which is the Cathedral of the Ordinariate. Now, as the second question, yeah, I mean, listen, you have to make a living where you can make a living. And if you can design a church for non-Catholics that gets them interested in the past, in history, it's a kind of evangelization. I mean, certainly there was a big movement in what we call in England, the nonconformists, Presbyterians, Methodists, Baptists, Congregationalists. There's a big movement of those sorts of churches in the States after World War I to build impressive Catholic-esque churches. Well, the more you can get them to do that, I suppose in some way you bring them a bit closer to the truth. Better than reinforcing their faith in congregational style barns.
Right, Mason, with another question who says, Mr. Franchini, I hate to add another question to the list, but as Mr. Coulombe is feeling presidential, I have a question for him. Would you be so kind as to ask him about his thoughts about the impossible presidency, wherein the administrative duties of the executive branch far outstrip the president and thus make him weaker by making the executive bureaucracy stronger?
Well, I mean, that's always a danger in every governance, that the bureaucracy, the permanent bureaucracy, will become more important than the quote-unquote representatives of the people. The British, of course, have long talked about this, hence the very funny series Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. It's certainly doubly true in a republic. The presidency, I mean, you've got several problems. One is, I believe, that the head of state, naturally speaking, is a monarch. What does that mean? It means not just that they're hereditary, but they're in for a long time. Whereas the most a president can ever be in is 8 years. And there's the old joke, he spends half his time trying to learn his job and the other half trying to get elected or reelected. So that's, it is a problem. And of course, as the presidency has become more and more quote unquote imperial, it's required a bigger infrastructure to support it. it does fall to the role of head of state to be patron of the arts and patron of learning and patron of this and that. But that's not really a role envisaged for the presidency by its, by the designers of the Constitution. And yet, naturally speaking, it is a role we humans expect out of our head of state. I think there's a sense in which the presidency is impossible purely because of that dichotomy between its constitutional nature on the one hand and the natural nature of the headship of state. There's a fundamental problem there. I mean, that if you think about it, that's a lot of what Star Spangled Crown was actually about, was reconciling in monarchy the inconsistencies and incoherencies inherent to our form of government. One of the examples that comes to mind, you may recall, is the nature of land ownership. The king is the lord of the land. He's the allode, as they say. But it was never decided, and it's on that basis that you've got public domain. Because the king decides he needs to retake to his direct ownership a bit of property for a highway or a road or a fort or a lighthouse or, whatever, that will benefit all of his subjects equally. They'll benefit the commonweal, in other words. But he has the obligation to compensate whoever he's taking it back from. Well, that makes a certain coherent sense. Under our system, it's a bit difficult because it was never decided if property is held in the United States allodially, which means the independent sovereign citizen is the complete and ultimate owner of the land, or whether it's feudally, as in England and other monarchies. The reason why that's a problem is that if we own land allodially, then you can't have public domain. But if we don't, then who is the lord of the land? Upon whose authority, upon whose ownership do we have public domain? And of course, the other thing that's funny about that is that in Britain and Commonwealth countries that retain the crown, public domain is still very restricted. But in the United States, doubtless because we're free and everything is done on our behalf by ourselves, the courts have ruled that public domain can include condemning areas as blight-ridden and taking them over. And for that matter, if you could just get more tax money out of somebody, you can seize property from someone else and give it to him.
Yeah.
And that, you could never get away with that in Britain or Canada.
Yeah. Okay. Question from Cal, who says, "Greetings, gentlemen. When I was growing up, my childhood parish had a practice during the liturgy that I considered to be rather strange in hindsight. Toward the start of the liturgy, a parishioner, likely a Sunday school teacher, would raise up what appeared to be a Bible and walk past the sanctuary, to which all of the young children, myself included, would follow her out of the church and into a classroom. We would then be taught a Sunday school lesson for about a half hour and return to Mass around the time of consecration. The reason I find this odd is that the Sunday school lesson would completely remove us for most of the Mass. I remember being excited to go to this lesson since I would get to interact with other kids instead of sitting quietly during the liturgy. I was wondering if this is a common practice at Novus Ordo parishes or is simply a particular oddity of this one."
No, I've actually observed it once upon a time in a number of places. I don't know that it's still as popular as it was, but there was a time when you saw that, not in most parishes, but in quite a few. And I'm sure there's still some that do it. They would call that the children's mass and things like that. I personally don't care for it. Ideally, you're there with your parents, the way I'm going to be with mine tomorrow. And if you have any questions about the Mass, which you always do if you're observant, and if it's obviously important to your parents, once you get to a certain age, and you ask them. Of course, then it's incumbent on the parents to be able to answer those questions. which means they have to know something, which means they have to learn something. But that was how I learned about the Mass. You know.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've tended to lose sight of as Catholics in America, anyway, is that the parents really are the primary educators of the children. The reason why my brother and I are Catholic is because our parents took that responsibility very, very seriously. A lot of parents, unfortunately, thought that Catholic school or Sunday school, CCD, would take care of it so they didn't have to think about it or worry about it. Well, that's wrong.
Yeah. That's really such a crucial thing I've been thinking about a lot. So many life decisions, and I think so much of the undesirable characteristics that America currently has results from taking the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Well, I should, read up on the catechism and know all these things, or I can just send the kid off and have some stranger teach him the faith.
Yeah.
I should be doing all these things personally, but I'm just gonna, put it on someone else. All these important tasks.
Well, tomorrow's the game. Tomorrow's the Super Bowl game.
I should be praying the rosary, but Sunday's football. That's yeah. There's so much of that.
Well,
It reminds me of you know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of Father Luke Zimmer. I read his book. And he was very critical of family life. He said, I think if we have time for all these activities, all these sports games, Boy Scouts, and all this and that, and yet we don't have time for family prayer life. Yeah, I don't see how that is. Like, he didn't understand that,
Well, that's because he was a celibate and didn't have a family, so he couldn't possibly understand. What I can tell you is that tomorrow, after Mass, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. After we finish Mass at St. Francis of Assisi in Mount Kisco. Okay. I can tell you what's going to happen.
Tell us, Charles.
Well, I'm glad you asked. When Mass is finished, we're going to walk from there to the goodie shop, which is there on Main Street in Mount Kisco. And we're going to have ice cream or something like that. And if there are any questions that came up about the sermon or about the church or anything else, we'll talk about them. Both walking to the goodie shop and then having our ice cream. But then the four of us are going to pile in the car. And let's see, it's 64, so it's a Renault, actually. And we're going to get in the Renault, and we're going to start driving. And we'll drive along, and Dad will tell us stories about the history of the place. And we'll see an old church or a graveyard or a monument or something. We'll stop and we'll read the inscriptions. We'll go probably to a brook or something like that. My brother and I will take our shoes off and hunt for crayfish and that kind of thing.
What, like picking up rocks?
Yeah, picking up rocks, hunting for them in the stream, looking for turtles and salamanders, stuff like that. Then we'll get back in the car and drive a bit further. By this time, it'll be getting on. So we'll go to some place like, I don't know, the Log Cabin in Armonk or the General Putnam Inn in Norwalk, Connecticut. We'll have a big dinner, probably steaks or pot roast or something like that. And then we'll drive back to our home in Kisco. And I guarantee you, neither he nor I are ever going to forget that for the rest of our lives. Even though in retrospect, it could only have been a couple of years. So, as I say, tomorrow when Pope Francis and Joe Biden and Chancellor Neyman come into my room to wake me up for another day's horror, I won't be there. Of course, the fact that I think Pope Francis, Joe Biden, and Chancellor Neyman come into my room every morning to wake me up shows you that my hold on reality already is it's a little sketchy.
That was a weird image right there, but yeah.
Where did he go? Where has he gone? He kept him gone far.
They personally are knocking on your door to oppress you.
Yes, exactly. You didn't know that? The Pope's there to make sure I didn't go to a Latin Mass. And the Chancellor and Biden are there to make sure I went to bed with a mask on. No, it's true. Everybody knows that. They check on each of us every day. Personally. They go around the world. They use the same sleigh Santa Claus uses at Christmas.
Wow.
Bringing crap in their bags. They're magical oppressors, magically malicious, as you might say. They're like evil elves.
All right.
Blood elves for you World of Warcraft people.
Ooh.
You didn't know the Pope, the President, and the Chancellor were all blood elves, did you?
I did not know that.
See, we're ruled by blood elves, and this has been kept from you by the same.
Taylor Swift is definitely a blood elf.
Oh, don't you get started on Taylor Swift and the World of Warcraft. She was protected by hotness.
There we go. Okay.
Is she still hot? I haven't looked.
I don't know. All right.
You know who my favorite X-Man is?
Your favorite X-Men? No, I can't guess. What?
Bruce Jenner.
Yeah, I would not have been able to guess that.
Well, he's an X-Man, right?
Oh.
What? What? Are you okay? You seem confused.
That's sad. All right.
Break down all the barriers. That's what I say.
All right.
There aren't many broadcasts, ladies and gentlemen, that will talk about Ralph Adams Graham and Bruce Jenner. You don't get these combinations too often.
No, you don't. All right.
Thank God. Or blood elves.
All right. Final questions. There are kind of three similar questions from French guy number 1. This is very thematic today.
Vive la France, premièrement.
So, he says, greetings and salutation to the capo di tutti, Tumblr, the count who counts the money.
You.
The pharaoh of free shipping and handling.
You.
And the Pasha of Paper, His Grace Vincent.
That's you.
Of course, similar greetings to the Sultan of Scholarship.
C'est moi.
The Raj of Royalism.
This is me.
The Lord of Lore.
Yo soy mío.
And the Sage of the Strange.
I'm me.
His Grace Charles.
See, I like the Sage of the Strange. It's like the Czar of the Bizarre. I like that.
Yeah. I present 2 questions to the sage, which I hope he will graciously answer. Firstly, I have always enjoyed alternate history and would be very curious as to what Charles would opine from some of the scenarios that have been running through my head for a while. I don't want to take up too much time, so for my first question, could Charles give a brief opinion on the following 3 scenarios? All right, scenario number 1. France wins the 7 Years' War. New France... What?
Pure heaven on earth.
I didn't even finish yet.
Well, I mean, it's obvious.
New France remains in French hands.
That's what I said.
As do all her other colonies which were lost in the correct timeline. How would this have affected the next 200 years? Would the French Revolution still have happened? What would France look like today? Would Quebec still be a French colony? And how would this have affected the United States without French revanchism driving them to support the American Revolution?
Well, for starters, life would be heaven on earth. I mean, I would have learned English as a foreign language. Maybe I'd be a scholar in some foreign tongue at Laval University or someplace like that, or maybe the later to be founded Université de la Nouvelle-Orléans in La Louisiane. Who knows? But life would be closer to heaven than it is now. That's for sure. It would be wonderful. It would
Wow.
be just so beautiful. It would be hard to imagine how wonderful it could be. Uh, the I doubt highly you would have had either the American or the French revolutions because number one,
Hmm.
a successful conclusion to the 7 Years' War, the French Indian War, would have meant the success of the Franco-Austrian alliance, which was the natural, I would say, way of things. The two major Catholic powers in Europe and Spain were also part of the deal. I think that a more natural development slash assimilation of the continent, especially vis-a-vis the Indians, uh, would have been in the offing. I doubt you would have had an American Revolution because the American colonies, would still be dependent on constant English support to exist. Um, you might have had a Prince Charles Edward Stuart, who might well have become King Charles III if the French were willing to push a later Jacobite rising. But whether or no, there wouldn't have been a French Revolution either, in no small part because the stresses and strains on France that occurred directly as a result of that defeat would not have happened. Now, who knows what would have gone on from there, because you still had the people like Voltaire and Rousseau pushing their crap. But without I'm sure that Prussia and Britain would have felt pressure to expand in their respective spheres. But a Franco-Austrian victory in the 7 Years' War would have made it harder. I mean, it's hard to say, of course, because human beings are still fallen. But my guess is that things would have been better in a lot of ways.
The Central Powers. Okay, scenario number 2. The Central Powers win the First World War. What would the world have looked like? Would the Central Powers have intervened on the side of the White Army in the Russian Civil War? Would this have been enough to prevent the Austrian and Ottoman empires from collapsing? Would Hitler still have been a successful politician? Would the lack of the stabbed in the back theory have hindered his rise significantly, or would the renewed German patriotism coupled with the Great Depression have compensated for this?
Well, let's start at the back and work forward. I don't think there would have been a Great Depression if it hadn't been for World War One.
What's the connection there?
Well, the connection there is that the indebtedness. One reason why the American Depression was exported overseas was that President Roosevelt demanded that all of our debtors try to pay back their debts, which were run up during World War One. But had we lost World War One, we would not be in a position to demand they pay back anything. And the Depression might well have been restricted to the States. Bear in mind that Italy escaped the Depression because of Mussolini's policies. It's quite possible to think that a German-dominated Europe would have done the same. Now, I don't know that it would have been all that much better for Austria if the Germans had won, because certainly the ruling circles in Germany, and I don't mean the Kaiser, I'm talking about people like Ludendorff and Hindenburg, wanted to reduce Austria to a complete satellite of Germany. And a German victory would probably have ensured that. But on the other hand, they very possibly would have intervened in the Russian Civil War. So, and you probably would not have had Hitler. He doubtless would have remained a weirdo on the fringes where he belonged. So, I would say that things would be far from perfect, but probably better than they turned out.
All right. Finally, scenario 3. The July 20 plot is successful. Hitler is dead, and the plan has gone off without a hitch. What happens next? Would the Western Allies have abandoned their demands of unconditional surrender if Hitler and his inner circle was out of the picture and replaced with the conservative German resistance being led by monarchists and Christian Democrats like Ludwig Beck and Karl Gudler? And how would the war against the Soviet Union have played out?
Well, that's the $100 question that they ask themselves. The answer is I don't know. A lot depends. You know, Roosevelt was very pro-Stalin. Weaning him away from the Soviet alliance would have been hard. But who knows if it meant an immediate ceasefire on the Western Front. It might have been difficult for him to refuse, especially if Churchill had gotten behind it. So certainly it's likelier had that happened than what did happen. But it might be that they would have insisted on unconditional surrender anyway. And in all likelihood, given that a negotiated surrender was the whole raison d'etre for the coup in the first place, if the successful plotters had been unable to deliver that, they might very well have been overthrown themselves by a sort of neo-Nazi putsch. But then, had that been the case, the blood would have been definitely and obviously on FDR's hands and no one else's.
I see. All right. That is it for this episode. Charles, any closing thoughts?
Well, yeah. Despite my calling for a complete departure into insanity, obviously that's not really an option. But something else we discussed is, and I've often advocated this before, and I advocate it again. Look around you, ladies and gentlemen. Look at your local scene and submerge yourself in it. You know, get active where you are. Enjoy what you've got. Make friends. Influence people. You can do it. You know, if you're a big coin collector, be active in your local coin collecting club. These things may seem small, but there are opportunities and areas where you can evangelize on the one hand, and where you can enjoy yourself on the other.
You know, I'm going to tell a little anecdote because I was talking about the path of least resistance and don't choose that. There's a story, a recent happening, a recent employee, a new hire in the Tumbler House Tower. You know, she's very introverted, right? Very introverted. And, you know, we asked her how she likes the culture in Tumbler House Tower. And, you know, she honest to goodness, you know, she said it's everything that she wanted it to, that she always hoped a workplace would be. Everyone's friendly. Everyone's supportive.
So she doesn't eat in the commissary.
But you see, she came from a place that was more typical, where everybody, and this is California, right? So everyone sort of sticks to themselves. They're very self-centered. They're self-important. And then, you know, so, and you don't really make friends at work because everyone's so transient. So everybody just kind of like stays in their own bubble. And so, obviously when you're in that sort of position, it's like, gosh, you long for something more unitive, something friendly, something real, something human. But when you get in that situation, then you have to make the effort. You can't do the path of least resistance anymore. Now you have to come out of your bubble a little bit. So that's sort of an example I think I want everyone to think about is there's opportunities there, but then you also have to go out and seize them,
You do. And of course, especially now, when we live under this wonderful pandemian regime, if you live in a jurisdiction where you're forbidden to have parties and so forth, now mind you, I've not done this myself, but I've heard that people have underground parties. And by that, I'm not talking about underground raves.
Yeah.
I'm talking about just gathering like-minded friends, putting up the blackout curtains so the Luftwaffe don't bomb you. Just living. It's very, very important, especially now that we do that. As I say, you have had 2 years of our master's utopia. Now, to the degree that you can resist, resist. You may not feel that you can drive in the convoy or honk at it or cheer on the streets or bring them food and petrol, although people are doing that. But whatever you can do, wherever you can, do it. And as I say, resistance can be as small as a meeting in the garden club. It doesn't have to be anything major. And same with evangelization. We tend to allow ourselves to get crammed into our little bubble, and we think that's all there is to life, and we have to break that. It's also, I have to say, looking at, say, Catholic Twitter, it's a fruitful source of internal dissension. And right now, this is the last possible moment when we should be at each other's throats. So that's the other thing I think we should try to press on for Carnival season. Unity with like-minded people all across the globe. And if you're, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If you see people who you agree with basically, but they're going about it a tactic that you don't agree with, okay, fine. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Let them find out. It's not up to you to destroy it, nor is it up for them to destroy what you're doing. Just let it alone and hope for the best. Pray for the best. And lastly, but not leastly, echoing our Holy Father, I want to send good vibes out to everyone.
Verbatim?
What?
Was that a verbatim?
Well, no, he was asking for good vibes from people. They didn't hear that? Oh.
This is why I don't listen to news or
no. See,
no. I don't want to be immersed in this.
You won't be. This is just too good to lose. He was on a talk show in Italy, and he said, he said to the journalists, pray for me, and if you do not pray, send good vibes my way.
What's the Italian translation of that?
I don't know. I'm sure it's even stupider than in English. But isn't that great? Send good vibes my way.
All right. Well.
And see, I can top his journalist friends, because not only do I pray for him every day, ever since I read that, I have been oozing good vibes at him.
Awesome.
Non-stop good vibes have just been pouring out of every part of my body at him. It's amazing. There's one in particular that came right out of here. Just.
All right. Well,
you seem confused.
No, that's a great thing to close on. Good vibes.
Good vibes. They're giving me good vibrations. Holy Father's got excitations. What?
I love the Beach Boys.
Yeah, me too. Well, I got a question for you, boss.
Yeah.
What is it if it's Monday?
It's off the menu.
And what about the soul you save?
It may be your own.
God bless you all, ladies and gentlemen, and good night. Good luck.